defined sales process for your startup? You do?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Can you share it?
Yeah, so relative to stages,
Yes.
it's identification, awareness, and then engagement, which is outbound marketing, phone calls,
Yeah.
email, then ask, and then close.
Excellent. That's very similar to this, right? Identify who I want to talk to, then try to connect with those people who I identified I want to connect to, and then kind of engage in a conversation where I can explore what the problem it is that they're trying to solve, so then I can see if I'm a fit or not. If I am, then I move into the advice stage where I understand your problem, here's how we can solve it. And eventually after that, it should be pretty natural and easy to go into like the negotiation and closing stage. If you have a well understood, a good understanding of the problem of your prospect, and you align your solution to that problem, the close is actually pretty easy. Now, what we're going to focus on today is actually these first two stages. A lot of sales professionals, a lot of startups, a lot of people that I work with, they're trying to fix their sales. They're trying to kind of accelerate their sales, and they're so worried about doing a great exploratory call, being understood by their prospects. And one of the things that I see a lot is, one of the main issues they have is they don't have enough top of the funnel sales. They don't have enough pipeline going, and that forces you to do bad practices. When you only have one person to sell to, you kind of make excuses and start doing the bad things, right? Like discounting too much or trying to push stuff. Now, the solution for having a great sales process is having enough pipeline. If I don't care if you close or if you close or if you close because I have a broad pipeline, then I can start doing the right things in my process. So this is why I'm so passionate about talking about generating top of the funnel pipeline for sales with prospecting. Now, it all starts with building a list of quality leads. And not any type of lead, just quality leads. And my question is, for you guys, why is it important to build a list of quality leads for your startup? Any takers? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you have to quality in, quality out. So identifying appropriate customers that fit in your ideal customer profile allows you to stay in your scope and ultimately add value to customers versus not particularly having identified customers in your profile. You have to do extraordinary, unusual things.
Right? So when you start talking, you need to focus on your ideal buyer. If you start talking with people who are not your ideal buyer, you're going to start doing things that are not right for your startup. You're going to start making kind of excuses or adjustments to the solution so that you can fit that non-ideal buyer. So you're going to end up with non-profitable customers first. Second thing, and this is the most common thing that happens, is you're going to waste a lot of time because most of these people won't buy. So you need to build a list of the most appropriate leads that you need to work with and focus on them. The worst problem that I see with salespeople is they're pursuing opportunities with the wrong leads and they're wasting time with the wrong leads. So first step is identify quality leads. And so to do this, you need to first create your ideal buyer profile. So who has here defined who's your ideal buyer for your company? Yes.
So my ideal buyer is car and pageant retailers.
I'm sorry?
Car and pageant retailers.
Okay. Great. And so what else? What else do you know about them? What else do you, like, that's very broad, that's very specific, but it could also be understood as broad. What else do you know about them that allows you to differentiate the good ones and the bad ones, even within that group?
So they have 2 open to buy seasons in April and August. August they have their biggest budget. They focus primarily on prom and high-end pageant, which are gowns more than $1,500. That's
What is there a particular problem that some of them have that make them more likely to buy from you?
Buying prom dresses and pageant dresses online is difficult because there's not an easy way for the retailers to put these items up online without having to jump through a lot of hoops, which I mean I can get into the technical about it, but
Okay, good. Thank you for sharing, and I'm going to show you like 3 things that we all should know about our buyers that will help us kind of delimit that a little bit more. Who else has defined their ideal buyer profile?
I try to sell mostly to CMOs, they're like internal marketing agencies.
Yeah.
And they usually have like a set age, like education level, interests, like that. Is that what you're talking about, buyer
Yeah,
persona?
so that's buyer persona,
Yeah.
that's great. What else?
So between 25 and
Yeah.
45, usually graduated, at least some college, and demographically is like, I guess more like the different percentage. I think it's like the different 1%.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it of a specific industry or all CMOs?
Within, I guess, retail CMOs, like retail sales CMOs, or like any kind of CMO in charge of like the retail industry.
Retail industry. Any particular size of the retail company? Larger, smaller, or doesn't matter?
Try to be like within 50 to 100 employees.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
And you can start with CMOs, and you can start kind of digging down and kind of making it more specific. So the who is important, right? Who, and the more specific, the better. So that's number 1. The other 2 ingredients are, I need to understand what are their usual goals, or what they're trying to achieve. And then the third thing I want to have is, what are the challenges that are getting in the way of their goals? So I work with, and I'll give you an example. I used to work at HubSpot in our partner program for marketing agencies. So I was looking for digital marketing agencies in LATAM between 5 to 15 employees, and a lot of characteristics, right? Like they work with B2B customers, etc., etc., etc. So I had the who. The goals were, these were ambitious owners of agencies that wanted to grow their agencies. So this wasn't a lifestyle business. They weren't happy with being a 10, 15 employee agency. They wanted to be a 50 employee agency with over $1 million in revenue. So that's what they wanted to achieve. But their challenge was the way they run their business was over 80% of the revenue was based on projects. And when your cash flow is based on projects, it comes and goes, right? You can't predict revenue long term. And because of that, they couldn't invest in growing the assets and infrastructure in their agency so they could get more clients. So that was a challenge getting in their way. Their business model was based on project-based revenue. So that's all I knew about them. Then I knew how to solve it, but I started there. Who, what's their goal, and what's their usual challenge of their goals? Write this down and kind of go through it and update it and iterate it until you speak with someone, and when you're speaking with someone about what you do in these terms, they will say, that's me, right? So, with that in mind, this is an example of the first tool, and the most important tool I think that I'm going to share with you today, which is the Connect Stage Positioning Statement. So this is what you use in that first interaction with your prospect when they ask you, what do you do? The first interaction, it's been a few minutes, you knew each other, like where are you from, and you talk about whatever, the weather or something, or sports, and then they ask you, all right, so what do you do, Brian? Right, what do you do? It's the first thing they ask, right? Who's been there? The first thing they ask is, what do you do? Yeah, I've been there. So I know many of you have been there. What do you usually answer when they ask you what you do?
Say, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what I do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? Sometimes, or most of the times, we're in that trap of answering what we do. Because the question is what you do, and you answer what you do, and that is a mistake. Because they're not asking you what you do because they're interested in knowing what you do. Why are they asking you, what do you do?
What would be great?
Because they don't want you to give an actual answer.
Well, it's more that, right? Like they just want to understand, engage. Is it relevant for me to be in this conversation with you right now? Am I wasting my time or not? So are you relevant for me? And so saying what you do is not what makes you relevant. What makes you relevant is them understanding that you solve the problems that they may be having. So this is where this Connect Call Position Statement comes in. And if we break it down, this is the structure that I like. It's kind of 5 components to it. The first component is the who, right? Startup founders, CMOs, and retail companies. Now, the more detail you get, the better, right? If I tell you I work with startup founders, right? All right, you work with startup founders, that's great, and I can help you with accelerating sales. That's interesting, right? But if I told you I work with startup founders of B2B sales or B2B software companies with a SaaS model that are growing fast into the mid-market. And if I get very detailed, just that having that level of detail almost pervades that sense of I'm an expert in that area. Is that I work with startup founders? Okay. But if I work with a very specific type of startup founders in a very specific industry, that gives me a lot more credibility. So when you're going through this and this positioning statement, you say, well, we work with or we help this type of person, be as detailed as you can, and use the role, use the person, don't use the company. Right? I see this done a lot. I do this exercise, and sometimes I ask people in this workshop to say, to send me an email with their positioning statement, and I can give them some feedback. And the usual first feedback and the most common feedback I always reply with is, well, don't use retail companies, don't use oil and gas manufacturers, use the actual role. Right? I work with financial directors in retail industry, in retail companies. I work with this type of person in this industry. So using the role is going to be very helpful. So that's step number one. Component number two is you're going to describe those goals in a positive manner. That's why I put it in green. So what are they trying to achieve? Right? If we go back to the marketing agency, they're trying to grow that agency. They want to really scale. They're not comfortable with being a lifestyle business. For those who are good and happy with having a lifestyle business agency, that is great. Those are not the people that I help, right? So I'm working with agencies who really want to scale their business. And then I switch from that positive framing of the goal, I switch to their challenges. And the more specific, the better. I gave you an example before of how I described the challenge of the persona that I helped with, this marketing agency that was basing their revenue on project-based work and not retainer recurring revenue. And I always paint that in a negative framework. Like I always say it in like a negative way. Like I want to elicit a little bit of emotion when I say this. So you're trying to do this, that's great, but you're usually frustrated because you're getting this thing getting in your way, right? I can't get to dresses, I can get to suppliers of dresses online the way I wanted to. So I'm usually kind of falling short of my goals of purchasing or the variety of offer that I have in my store. So those are the components. The last component is one of the most important ones, is that last question at the end. Does this happen to you? So if we take a step back, this is the first time we're interacting with a prospect. And the first thing they do is they ask us what we do. So we're responding with something that is in their world, not our world. But the last thing we want to do is we want to change the dynamic of that conversation. Because if I only answer, this is what I do, the next round of funding and I end there, the next thing that happens is, the dynamic of the conversation is, okay, now the prospect is going to ask a second question. And then you're going to respond. And then another question, you're going to respond. This is not an interview, right? If anything, you're interviewing them. So by adding this question at the end, you're trying to change the dynamic. Okay, I'm here to ask the questions. I'm here to understand your world, what you're going through, and figure out if we're a fit and if we can help you out. So if I go to, does this happen to you, and this resonates, they're going to say, you know what, that's me. I have found a problem solution fit for my startup, but I'm really struggling to getting that traction and scale in sales. Okay, tell me a bit more about that. What are you trying to do? What have you tried so far? What's not working? What do you think is not working? I get into a line of questioning, and it's not to be selfish, it's actually to be helpful. I'm trying to get a sense of whether someone is someone I can help. Like I've been through it where I'm asking questions, someone is telling me they can't grow, and it turns out the reason they can't grow is that they don't have enough pipeline of talent to feel like they're consulting business. Like, you know what? Your problem is HR, your problem is sourcing talent, your problem is not marketing and sales, so I can come in here and help you sell more, but that's not the bottleneck to your growth. The bottleneck to your growth is hiring the right people. So I'm not the solution for you. Now, when you solve that problem, we can talk about that. And maybe that's 6 months from now, maybe that's a year from now. That's when we should talk. So I'm being helpful, and I'm also being protective of my time, right? I won't waste a year working with this prospect when they're not ready for my solution. So really important to change the dynamic of the first conversation where you can be in a position to be asking questions. Now, this is the most important element, right? We know who we want to talk to, and we know what we're going to say when they ask us, what do we do? So the next step in this kind of process is, how do we find the leads? So I ask you, what are some good places to find leads?
Networking events?
What's that?
Networking events?
Yeah, right? Networking events, what else?
Specific databases where your leads have been called.
Right.
People have found.
Like industry associations, databases.
LinkedIn
What-
groups.
LinkedIn groups, that's fantastic, right? LinkedIn is so easy. That's a great one. I use that a lot. What else?
Your competitors' web pages.
Competitors' web pages, that's for sure. What else? That's it?
Conventions and trade shows.
Conventions and trade shows. There's a ton, right? What about here? What about here at ATDC? What about here in Atlanta? Hey, what about each other? Right? What about your family and friends? Now, family and friends are, for me, terribly used lever for finding prospects. Because what happens is we go to our network and we ask them, hey, can you make a referral? And that's not enough. I think two things that I would do if I were using my network to get a referral is I would actually give them a quota. And I don't mean that in the sense of like I'm going to fire you if you don't reach quota. I just want to give them a reference of to how much help do I need? Well, I need introductions to the retail industry. Well, I need introductions to CMOs in the retail industry of companies of this size. Is there any chance you can get me in front of like 3 or 5 of them? Now, if someone is asking you, you wouldn't. It feels weird when you think about doing it yourself, but it wouldn't feel weird if a friend asked you and he told you, like, I'm looking for about 3 to 5. You could, yeah, that's okay. I know how much you're looking. I can't do 3. I know 2 that I can refer. Is that okay? It just gives it, it makes it tangible for people helping you out. So definitely do that. Current and past clients, if you have some, your target accounts, social media, definitely LinkedIn, company verticals, existing relationships, etc. So maybe you have relationships from another job you had or another industry, and people are connected in many ways. So even if you go to LinkedIn and you see how many connections you have, and you added the second degree connections, you would see that go from like 1,000 to 1,000,000. So there's a lot of people out there that can help you out. Great. So now we know what to say, where to find the leads. Now let's go into like the mentality and like the actual execution of this connect phase and how do we engage in this conversation. So the first thing is, what is the point of having a connect phase? This is kind of like a rapid first interaction with a prospect. What is the goal of this phase? What are you looking for? Right? Again, this is not yet that kind of long meeting where you're going to explore deeply the problem, but that first interaction, what is your goal in that first interaction?
It's just identify fit or interest.
Yeah, right. Is there something I can help with? I'm initiating that kind of overall or general understanding of the situation. I'm going to go deeper later in my process, but just now I just want to see if there's a fit. If we should be investing time with each other, that's perfect. What else? What else are you trying to accomplish in that first conversation? Sometimes it's just 15 minutes, right? Sometimes it's just over the phone or video.
Educating them?
Educating them. Tell me more about that.
You just want to let them know that you have a solution or some sort of offering that they may be interested in, so they should know that you exist.
That's interesting, and that's one of the things that I see a lot and that I see a lot of people fall into, especially when you're a startup, because part of your world is having as many people know what you do and why you exist, so they can help you make connections, so maybe you can get additional funding. So that's something that we do as founders for sure. But when we're talking with prospects, it really isn't about what you do. It really isn't about your solution. It really is about their problem. Those first 15 minutes, they don't really care about your solution. Like, nobody cares about inbound marketing until you're talking about them maybe not reaching their sales or marketing goals, maybe being frustrated because they're trying to do 10 campaigns a month and they can only do one because just putting all the data together takes them 4 hours a day. And they're frustrated because they can't execute on what they're trying to accomplish. They're not getting to their goals. Once they're frustrated with that, then they're open to maybe looking for a solution. So that first connection is really more about understanding if that frustration is there. Definitely understanding high-level challenges, establishing that initial relationship too, right? Kind of get to know the person, establishing some rapport. And rapport is not about being liked. Rapport is about, hey, I understand your world, and maybe it makes sense that we keep talking to each other. So it's more about asking great questions, and not about just being nice and just being a good human being to connect with. That's important too, but the most important part is, can you establish yourself as someone who could help them out by asking great questions in that first conversation, by really giving insight into the problems that they're facing. Not so much insights into the solution they should be looking for, but insights into the problems they're facing. That's what opens up the relationship. And finally, of course, is schedule that next stage of the sales process. If there's a fit, now there's an opportunity for me to you know what? It looks like we could help each other out. It looks like what you're going through is something that I can potentially help with. Would you like to set up a call or a meeting where we can actually dig deeper into it and kind of get a better understanding? So you're scheduling that next step of the process. And it's a great idea to break it up. Right? It's a great idea to break up in 2 stages, in 2 meetings. My experience is if you try to do everything on that first interaction, you're going to lose attention pretty quickly. So try to set up a stage where you can both agree you're going to go deeper into the problem and figure out if you can help solve it together. So those are things that you try to accomplish in that first stage, that first interaction with your prospect. Now, what are things that you're trying to avoid? What should you not do in that first interaction with a prospect?
Extended monologue.
Right? You just talk about yourself. Kind of like what I'm doing now, which is so surreal and weird for me, but it makes sense, right? So talking about yourself for sure. What else?
Sell anything.
Oh man, you stole my punchline for this slide. But yeah, you're not selling, right? You're just trying to understand, do they have a problem that I can help with? And this sounds like a sales trick. I will tell you this. I told you before, I'm not a sales person by nature. I actually grew into it and developed that skill. And the biggest thing that helped me in my career in sales was understanding in that first interaction, I'm not trying to sell anything. It took a huge weight off my shoulders. So now I'm just trying to have a conversation. Now I'm just trying to understand, hey, maybe you have a problem that I can help with. If you don't, that's okay. We move on with our lives. There's not a problem with that. Now if I have a strong pipeline, I can do that. If you're the only person in the world that I can close right now, that's going to be tough to execute. So definitely not talking about yourself, about your solution. This is not where you talk about your solution. This is where you understand their problem and you gain authority. You gain that consultative status, expert status, by asking great questions and providing insights into the problem they're facing. So the way I gained expert status with marketing agencies was not saying, hey, here's how HubSpot helps you establish a revenue stream of recurring revenue services. It was more about, hey, you're not growing because your cash flow works like this, and you have these ups and downs, and most likely your EBITDA is below 15% because you're running your business like this. And they will say, you know what, that's right. My margins are under 15%. I never realized it was because of these cash flows going up and down month to month. That gains you credibility. That's all you need to do to establish that relationship. Right? So not about the solution, it's about the problem. And you stole my punchline, man. Number one thing you do not do in a connect call, you don't sell. And this is actually great news for you. It's going to make it easier, especially if you're an introvert like me who is very nervous in those first interactions. You're just trying to meet people, just trying to see if they have a problem you can solve. So what is the hardest part of the connect stage? And usually it's probably a phone call. What is the hardest part?
Getting them to pick up the phone.
Getting them to pick up the phone. That is an interesting one. What else?
Getting them to stay on the phone.
Getting them to stay on the phone. Good ones.
You picking up the phone.
Right? That is the hardest part. Right? Because we've been on the other side and we've been interrupted. We've been cold called from other people, and we know we hate it. So when it's our turn to pick up the phone and do it, we kind of already project that it's going to fail, and so we're so scared of doing it. So like reaching out to strangers and picking up the phone ourselves is actually, in my experience, the hardest part of a sales connect call. So I will tell you this from experience, and I told you at the beginning, you have to pick up the phone. Okay, I told you before, I started a company, I was afraid of selling, I did not pick the phone enough, and I had to close the company. And actually got me into this 10-year career in sales, which has been fantastic, but I do go back and see, wow, if I had been a little bit less afraid of doing the thing that I didn't like, maybe I would have done something different. So remember, the fear of connecting with your prospects is in your head, and I want to ask you, because this happens a lot, when you don't pick up the phone and call prospects, what are some of the excuses you use? Like at the end of the day, it's being Thursday, it's 11 p.m., you're going to sleep, or you're finished with your day, and you didn't call a single prospect today. What are some of the excuses you use to say, I didn't call someone today?
Too busy.
I was too busy with more important stuff than getting customers, right?
Yeah.
What else?
They're probably too busy.
They're too busy. Oh, I don't want to interrupt them. It's Wednesday. No one picks up a phone on a Wednesday.
It's too late, it's too early.
It's too late, it's too early. They're about to go to lunch. They're just coming back from lunch. They're about to go to dinner. Right? It's Friday afternoon. Like, we get ourselves into these excuses, and these excuses are all in our heads. Now, we're going to talk about in the next few slides, how are we on time? We're going to talk about in the next few slides how you make what I call a warm call and not a cold call interrupting people. The first thing is you need to get that idea off your head, right? You need to pick up the phone, and you need to avoid those excuses, like I was too busy today. It almost sounds funny when you say, I was too busy to call and try to get new customers and revenue for my company. It sounds illogical, but it happens a lot. It happened to me a lot. And the reason is we're trying to avoid, humans avoid the things that they don't like. And so if I'm building this company, I'm so passionate about the idea that I'm trying to build, the problem that I'm trying to solve, it's so much easier. Let's say I'm a coder. It's so much easier to go to the computer and keep coding away my solution instead of going to do the uncomfortable thing, which is picking up the phone and calling a stranger. And we always avoid that thing that we don't like, so we have to find ways to not avoid it. And the main technique that I've learned to avoid that is actually put it in my calendar. So I put in my calendar every day at least 1 hour to prospect. It's kind of that annoying thing, right? Oh, you have to prospect, you have to prospect, you have to prospect. If I don't put it in my calendar, I will not do it. Because my nature is not to do that, because it's uncomfortable. And some people ask me, well, do you do like 1 hour every day, or do you do like 5 hours on a Friday afternoon? My suggestion is always do it daily. Because what you want is this to become a routine in your day-to-day. You want this to become something that you do constantly, like shower, like brushing your teeth, like having lunch. It's something that you don't even think about. Like if you do it every morning when you come to the office, you don't even think about it. You come into the office, you sit down, and you start prospecting for an hour, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, depending on where you are. But put in your calendar, and ideally do it every day. The next thing is the actual execution, and we're going to talk about that a little more. This is coming from a study published in Harvard Business Review. It was done by InsideSales.com, hundreds of thousands of sales reps. And they were studying how they behave around prospecting and how customers reacted to prospecting. And there's different elements to the study, but I really like this one that's number 4, persistence. And the study was how many times you need to attempt to connect with a prospect before they actually pick up the phone, before they actually engage with you. And as you can see, just trying twice increases your likelihood of connecting by a ton. Now, what happens is most sales reps don't actually try more than once. You can see here in this graph, about 25% try twice, which is crazy, right? I was mentoring a sales rep once, and he was so excited about getting leads. He used LinkedIn. He got 100 leads, and we worked on the connect call positioning statement. He had a brilliant connect call positioning statement. He started sending those out in an email or LinkedIn messages. He sent 100. And 1 week later, we meet again, and he said, Jose, like, I'm so frustrated. Like, I sent 100, only one person replied. It's not working. And so I asked him, hey, so what happened when you reached out the second time to the other 99? And what was his answer? Oh, I haven't. Right? Dude, what are you trying to do? Right? You need to try more than once. So at least 5 times. Now, these changes, my recommendation is try at least 5 times. At HubSpot, we have enough data where we know our small business team needs to try 6 times versus our enterprise team needs to try 15 times. So it does vary by industry, it does vary by company size, but at least get started and try at least 4 times. If you try 4 times, you're increasing your likelihood of connecting with prospects. You're also creating a huge competitive advantage against the other 90% of reps who do not try more than twice, right? So definitely not do it once, just try another one, right? And book 1 to 3 hours a day on your calendar. More, better. What?
I was just gonna ask, like, how spread out, like, do you suggest? Like, obviously,
Yes.
you can't be like every other day, once a week. Like, do you set milestones in timing?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to go through it
Okay.
right now, actually. So, actually, let me check here if I have it.
Another one.
So this is, it's not in the slides. It's a great question. So this is what I learned at HubSpot, and it worked for us. Or remember, we're a SaaS company, high velocity sales, or high volume, I guess. But what we've experimented with different timelines. Like, do we reach out once a month or once a week or every day? And we found our sweet spot is 2 days. So we call it the 2-day follow-up or the second day follow-up. So what we found is if you do day after day after day after day, like I contact you Monday, you don't respond. I contact you again Tuesday, you don't respond. I contact you again Wednesday, that's too much. Right? That's where you get those unsubscribes like this. Right?
Are you receiving phone calls? Are you contacting and leaving detailed messages? Or are you just contacting, they don't answer, not leaving a message, no, it's called back?
Oh man, that is I'm gonna go to that after I go through the timeline. But yeah, that voicemail is a great question. And it depends by country too. Like in Chile, you wouldn't do that at all. Like it's frowned upon. But in the US, you should, right? And they're not going to respond to it, but it's something that increases your likelihood of connecting with them the next time you reach out. But going back to timeline, so every day doesn't work. The thing with doing it once a week, and this may change a little bit by industry, but the thing with doing it once a week is you get into this kind of like newsletter mentality on your prospect, where they're getting this kind of weekly email. They don't need to even open. Like you've seen those emails before, right? Like the once a month or the once a week. They always come, and you're always like, I'll read the one next week, and just delete it or mark it red or just do whatever. So what we found is if you wait a whole week, they don't respond. They actually only respond when you send that goodbye email, because now they're not receiving that newsletter anymore. So what we found our sweet spot to be is 2 days. So if I send you an email, and what I do and what I told people that I've worked with is, send an email, make a call. Same day, right? Email, call. If you can't connect, wait a day, and let's say that's on a Monday. On a Wednesday, do that again. And maybe add LinkedIn. So maybe email and LinkedIn. So you try a couple of channels every time, and do this at least 4 rounds. Okay, so you're sending about 4 emails and making 4 phone calls. So that's 8 attempts at connecting. If it's 8, it's about a week and a half of trying to connect. If they don't respond with that level of intensity in a way, they're not interested. So just discard them and move away. Just mark it in your CRM as, not interested right now. Try again in like 3 months or something like that. And I know it's hard to do for a startup because 3 months is a long time, but it's not worth it to keep trying more times, right? So try this, and then use technology to help you out. Because go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, you guys found that there's a difference when on the day that you start your sequence or outreach? Is it better to start on Monday, or have you guys found starting on Tuesdays is better?
Not specifically on when to start like that sequence, but there are studies, and that same study that I showed before, that was just number 4 persistence, but there are other aspects of it that show which days of the week and which hours of the week are best for prospecting emails. I don't know other tools, so this is where technology may come in handy. So one thing that I have when I use my CRM and HubSpot is, it would actually tell me what is the best time to send today, the best time to send in the next 24 hours, or the best time to send this week. So I write the email and I'm going to send it to you, right? And so instead of clicking send, I click like send later, and it tells me, okay, if you want to send this in the next 24 hours, schedule this to be sent out at 8 p.m. instead of like right now at 1 p.m. Or if you really want to maximize it, like the best time in the next 7 days is going to be Sunday at 10 p.m. And it's 25% more likely that they're going to open it. So technology can come in and help you with that. So HubSpot uses, of course, AI to kind of figure this out. But if you're trying to do it by yourself, I would say just every day start new sequences. Every day do 5 to 10 and start them out and see how it works. Okay, cool. So who's tired? Any questions so far? Great. So what do? Kind of, we need to do this at volume. I know it's easier coming from a SaaS company who has by nature volume, but you need to start trying at least 10 leads per week. I used to work with marketing agencies, and they're not like floating or swimming, in leads. But if I told them you need to contact 10 leads a week, that sounds a lot. But if you tell them you just need to contact 2 people every day, that takes half an hour at most, even if you're trying to find them. So if you do schedule 1 hour in your calendar, you're going to be contacting at least 2 people every day. And if you put them in a sequence, then your activity is actually that times 4, right? If you have that sequence of 4 emails or 4 emails and calls, you're actually multiplying that by a lot. So this goes from, what I've seen is sales teams or sales individuals doing 20 attempts at connecting with people a month to hundreds of attempts. And that really does increase the number of new opportunities you're generating in your pipeline. So definitely try about 10 a week, 2 a day. If you do have the pipeline, that's where the mentality and doing the right things come easy. Like, you can be human, you can have this always be helping mentality. I don't need to sell you anything, I just need to know if you have a problem that I can help with. If you don't, we move on. I'm calling 8 more people today, right? So that mentality will help you a lot. The last part, and this is the big difference between you doing warm calling or inbound selling versus people who are like at AT&T calling you with that like international calling plan or whatever they are offering these days, is research. The big difference for you guys doing this prospecting process is you need to answer the most important question in prospecting in my world, or in my thinking. The most important question that I need to answer in prospecting is, why you, why now? Why am I sending you this email? Why am I sending you this email now? Like, you're not a part of 100 people in a list that I try to connect with. I actually have a valid reason for why I chose you and why I chose this moment to connect with you. And the way you kind of respond to this question is doing research, right? So, what are signals a business gives when you look from the outside in? What are signals a business is struggling with a problem you help with? Have you thought about this? Like, any volunteers that's like, what would you look for?
We also work with digital marketing agencies. If they're hiring a lot of people, that's a good sign. That
Right.
We can help them.
So hiring people is a good sign of if your solution is about like growth, if they're hiring people. In the case of like marketing solutions, if they're discounting a lot, they're probably having a problem with lead generation or demand generation, so they probably need marketing solutions. What else? So as an example of something that will be a sign, looking from the outside in, that someone is looking for the type of help that you provide.
me, it's looking at properties and seeing how much of their building or complex is actually full, and if they're underutilized, then I see the opportunity to inject our solution there.
How do you do that? How are you able to extract that information looking from the outside in?
Yeah, so sometimes it's publicly posted, sometimes it's like someone in the construction industry is saying, hey, we're having a really tough time. You say, oh, interesting. And then you start to learn a little bit more about the problems, or maybe calling some of these numbers that you can find. Just really using your network in order to figure out like who are having the problems that your solution is applicable to.
Yeah. So one thing we do at HubSpot, one thing that I coach marketing agencies when I was working with them to do is create a list of those signals. And just look for them as you're doing prospecting and research. Look for those signals. Are they hiring new people? Are they showing signs of like they're discounting? Are they opening operations somewhere else? Are they closing operations? Is there something macro going on? Is there like legislation changing in a way that is a threat or an opportunity for your company? All these things are just excuses for me to answer the question, why you, why now? So that's the first thing. The second thing that happens when you do this is that you actually transcend the solution. So I'm reaching out to you because you look like you have this problem that I can help with. And if I start the conversation like that, I have first more likelihood of connecting. Second, I have a higher likelihood of that process having urgency from the get-go. Sales processes that are pushed by a problem to solve move quicker and more effectively than the processes that are being moved by the attractiveness of a solution. So by doing this research, you can answer that. Go ahead.
Is that something you have to be very careful with? Sometimes it might come off as like you're dissing them, or saying like, if I'm trying to sell chat technology, they don't have a chatbot. I'm like, hey, you guys are so behind because you don't have this. If I word it a specific way, it could come off as, I don't know, snobby, but like.
So the thing is, you don't highlight the solution, you highlight the problem. So you're talking about a chatbot in the website, right?
Right.
So like, hey, I was learning about company X, about your company, and notice, and maybe you can do some Google analytics. It looks like you're investing a lot on like generating traffic to the website. But one thing that I've learned in this industry is sometimes there's frustration because although you're investing, right, you go back to that connect composition statement, you're investing a lot to generate traffic to your website so that you can increase demand for the sales teams and grow the company, but you're frustrated because although you're increasing traffic to your website, you're not generating the quantity and quality of leads that you wanted to. Is that happening to you? Right? I'm not talking about chatbot, you're talking about conversion, right? Now, one of the tools for conversion is a chatbot or a form or a call to action. We can talk about that later, but if I can get your attention into you don't have enough conversion of traffic to leads, and you actually say, you know what, we're wasting money on all these social campaigns to get to 10,000 visitors a month, and we're still not seeing the leads. If they say, yeah, and then you say, what's your conversion rate? And they're like, oh, it's like 0.5%. Wow, what should it be? They don't know, maybe you can educate, right? Oh, it should be 3%. How much more that would be for you if you could have 3% conversion? Why are you not doing that? What have you tried? So that gets you in that conversation about the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so research to answer the question, why you, why now? Once you do that, you also have to keep in mind the role of the person. So many of you, how many of you could interact with different roles at your prospect companies? Yeah. What are those roles?
CIO, CXO, CMO,
Right.
CFO.
So CFO, CMO, CIO.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have the same conversation with the CMO than with the CFO?
No.
Not at all, right? Even if it's the same signal. So you have the signal of that business is having a problem that you can help with, but you also have the context of who you're talking to. So like at HubSpot, for example, we're talking about growth, business growth, sales growth with marketing and sales. But if we're talking about growth and if we're addressing a signal of a problem of growth in our prospects, we're mindful of whether I'm talking about that with the CEO, the CMO, or the chief sales officer. It's very different. So if we're talking about that website, if we're talking about traffic and conversion, that is a CMO conversation. Oh, the conversion of your traffic is not low. If I talk about that with the CMO, they're going to be right in it, right? Like they're going to be super excited and open to having that conversation. But what if I try to have that same conversation with the chief sales officer? Are they going to care about traffic conversion on the website? Or do they care more about how many leads should each rep in your team be getting every month? And are you there? Oh, that's more impactful, right? What's the productivity per rep in your team right now? What should it be? Is it lower than it should be? Is your team discounting a lot in your deals when they're closing? Why is that? Because they don't have enough pipeline, so they don't have enough leads. So it's not about traffic conversion, it's about the team being fed with enough demand of leads, of quality leads. So that's a different conversation. And then for the CEO, it's different, right? It's company growth, it's revenue growth, is my cost of acquisition going down while my value per customer going up? It's my CAC to LTV becoming better and better and better. So that's going to be my approach there. So what's the value of your customer of yours right now? Oh, it's $10,000. All right, what's your cost of acquiring them? What's driving that up and what's driving that down? Now it may lead to you need to convert more leads on your website, but the conversation itself is different. So I take that signal and I take the role and I make a contextual conversation. So now this is hugely different than making a cold call, and this is where you're going to have way more success connecting with prospects. So I'll give you an example. Who wants to take a shot at it? So your solution is sales growth or revenue growth, and that's what your company does. And you're trying to talk with the CEO, and the signal you notice is they just hired a new VP of sales. They're a logistics company, and they hired a new VP of sales. You're talking with the CEO. How would that conversation go? Who wants to take a shot at it? Nobody? This is a safe environment. If you're scared here, you won't pick up the phone when we finish. No break? No break?
I got you.
All right, go.
So I kind of talked through points. One of the research issues could be, from a logistics perspective, using drones. So drones reduce their costs, improve their risk, but it opens up another line of business for them.
Okay. So if we go back to this, and again, we're talking with the CEO of a logistics company, right? They just hire a VP of sales. So the first thing is we think through, why would they hire a new VP of sales?
Well, they weren't doing well.
They probably weren't doing well.
Yeah, the other one failed.
Yeah.
Or they're after a new market.
Right? So those are great questions to ask. Why are you, I noticed you hire a new VP of sales. Why did you go for that? And they can tell you, oh, the other VP was amazing, but he got a better offer.
Right.
That's different. Or he can say, or she can say, hey, our VP of sales, wasn't that great. And what happened is, and you probably will know this if you've worked with the logistics industry, the problem with these type of companies is they depend so much on existing customers for new revenue. Like they grow by growing relationships with their existing install base, but it's really hard for logistic companies to get new businesses. So when they hire a new VP of sales, maybe you look at the trajectory of that VP of sales and what they do. Did they help other companies kind of accelerate new sales, or did they help companies accelerate install base selling? So like HubSpot, for example, in the last few years, I would say 3 or 4 years, one of the things that we're trying to be better at is not acquisition of new customers. We're pretty good at it, but can we be better at helping our customers use more of our products, right? So we used to be just marketing, but now we're sales, we're CRM, we're customer service tools. So can we get better at taking our customers who love us for our marketing tools and actually help them realize that they could be using our sales tools and our customer service tools? So that's install-based selling. So my new VP of sales will probably come from a company who was going through that, right? Or if you look at HubSpot, they just hired Jamil Rangan, the new Chief Customer Officer, someone who's going to be the lead for the marketing, the sales, and the services team. And you would know that because she was doing the same thing at Dropbox. Oh, so like HubSpot is trying to put the marketing, sales, and services team together. And so that's probably where they're going. So now when I do an outreach to this company, I want to do that with that context. Does that make sense? Is that different from a cold call? It's hugely different, right? So I know we have a couple of minutes left. So I'll finish with a prospecting checklist. First of all, define your ideal buyer profile. Remember, who, and the more specific the better. And I'm going to share the slides, right? What's their goal? They're trying what's the goal they're pursuing? But what are the challenges that's getting in their way of the goals? Define the sources of leads and have quota for each of them. Is my website going to generate leads for me? Okay, how many a month? Is my social prospecting, how many a month? Are my friends, how many a month? I want to kind of have numbers behind it so I can keep myself accountable. This one, third one, develop your connect call positioning statement. That's a big slide with I do this, If you want to send it over to me, I'd love to take a look at it, give you feedback. I've done this thousands of times. Establish a prospecting sequence of how many times and with what time frame, and block time in your calendar every single day. You do this one, everything else is going to be easier. You do this one first. Until you do this one, you're not going to do great. Block time in your calendar for prospecting. That's going to enable a lot of growth for your company. And that's it. I'm here because of the partnership, so if you have more questions about that partnership, go to this website, and that's pretty much it. Thank you.